takes many shapes and forms. Sometimes it is quiet letter writing. Sometimes it is calling up a very nice person named Heather Williams on the telephone and having a very compassionate person-to-person talk. Sometimes it is sitting and writing and editing an email and waking up the next morning and re-editing that email because you want to make sure that you're using supportive and nonviolent language. And you want to make sure that if you read that email or you read that letter back to yourself, that it would make you feel good, that it would make you feel motivated, that it would make you feel like if you agreed with this sort of policy, you would be contributing to making a difference, right? So take your time. Advocacy is not just loud protests, though those sometimes get to a point where they are also needed and effective. But people behind the scenes are doing a lot of the work here. The second really big message that I want to send is policymakers don't flip compost piles. When's the last time you saw your city council member out composting? Probably, I mean, if anyone has an example here, I will stand corrected. And then I'll sit down, like totally, presentation over. But basically the point is we're the experts here. Policymakers go to law school to learn about how to make law. We go to compost summer camp to learn how to make compost. We're the experts that can actually write to tell them this is the best way to do stuff. And the really excellent part of that is we've been doing that for the last 3 years. I have not only helped to grow the California Alliance for Community Composting, which has started out as an unincorporated policy advocacy organization to help lobby that SB 1383 needed to carve out an inclusive space for community scale, decentralized and local networks, and how effective we could be, and that that law was really motivating cities to do a one-size-fits-all model, and that actually there are many solutions and many ways to cut this pie, and also a lot of opportunity for partnership. So I started organizing my local advocates, which are just people like you and I. We're just everyday people that aren't lawyers, thank God. And just kidding. Attorneys have been extremely helpful during this process, and I want to give a major shout out to the Sustainable Economies Law Center right now, which hosted this curriculum that I'm going to share with you today. It's called the Soil Policy Party, because I don't do anything without fun parties. So what we did is we organized coalitions by once a month hosting a dinner. People like to be fed. So we got really healthy food, we brought them together, we said once a month will you sit with us for 2.5 hours and we're going to hack out one section of the law. And we're going to see how far we can get and also vision how far we want to go in this area of the law. So the first thing that we did is set up a formula. It's people and food. And then we sat and we sold soil story time. We sat around, we talked about our feelings, which is incredibly powerful and important. And then we dig into the law. So I'll go through all the sections that you can look at. Then we made something. So we did art and we wrote letters. Cal Recycle has gotten a lot of really creative cartoons, letters from the city of Oakland out of this. We wrote things that said we've illegally transported this organic material inside our letter and we sent them all dead leaves and cards. So like I said, advocacy can be super creative and fun. And we said, please, oh gosh, the US Postal Service is now an illegal hauler. So it's okay to make this a funny joke to draw perspective of just how ridiculous sometimes the law doesn't reflect what's happening on the ground, right? To make it fun. First, we started story collections. The first meeting was just about learning from each other. What are you doing? What's your organization? What troubles are you having? What area of the law is really confusing to you? What are you not happy with? What are you happy with? Where are you going? Where are we now? It all started actually in Oakland with zoning. Did you know that you can't put a transfer station in a residential area? Where do you think they host farmers markets? Residential areas? Do you know that a community drop-off location is technically considered a transfer station, right? Because we bring our stuff there, they hold it, and then they take it to an actual designated facility. Oh wow, that doesn't make any sense. How are we going to do community drop-offs at farmers markets if a zone, farmers markets in a residential area, but transfer stations can only be put in industrial zones? Doesn't make any sense. Well, so the good thing is that we are, I sit as a representative on the U.S. Composting Council's zoning task force, and we're in the middle of writing zoning for small scale, on farm, agricultural, and industrial level composting, really understanding where it should go. Because believe it or not, most zones don't even list composting. They list community agriculture, community gardens. So we're working on that. I would love to know in your cities, where does composting fall in your zoning ordinances? The next thing that you're going to have to look at is hauling. We briefly touched on this. There are a lot of opportunity for partnerships through micro hauling to work with, say, if there is already established one. There's also great opportunities here to be legitimized as a certified hauler in your location. There are also opportunities to just cut that part of the process out, right? The community drop-off is very effective. The reducing waste to begin with in food recovery is very effective, and also managing it on site is very effective. There are a lot of ways that we can still continue to make a real difference and not get hung up on this hauling thing, okay? And SB 1383 includes a clause, which we actually worked really hard to get in, which says nothing in this entire piece of legislation prevents a generator from reducing their waste, managing their own waste on site, or donating that material to a community-based organization. You guys are okay. You're welcome also. The next one, we got together and we said nothing actually makes our point better unless it is followed up with evidence-based reasoning. How effective is that, right? And facts are fun. Look at how fun facts are. Lynn has really walked us through a lot of factual information. We can talk about how compost makes soil healthier. We can talk about how soil makes food healthier. We can talk about how large-scale industrial composting actually is an environmental justice crisis, right? There are a lot of facts that we can give them, and nothing helps policymakers make better decisions than with really good facts. So I have a whole meeting on that. The next one is compost pile outlaws. This is my personal favorite. So it's where can you put a compost pile? Well, we also worked with the state to actually get an exemption for what they call small scale activities. So this is anything that is below 100 cubic yards. Every single site that you have seen in our site visits in this area has been below 100 cubic yards, and they are moving a significant amount of material. So actually, that's a really big window to work in. That's the state level exemption. Where you can put it at your local level, again, depends on this local zoning ordinances. So we are coming up with a draft model ordinance. We're almost finished it, and this need will be eventually met for you guys as well. So we're hoping that the zoning and planning commissions will adopt what comes out from the USCC as the real expert in this area. Bill watching, not to be confused with bird watching, though it's just as boring. Just kidding, I love bird work. The goal is basically to identify what is coming down the pipeline, because we can't really do effective policy making if we don't understand all these sneaky things that they keep putting in. So things that they'll do up there is they'll introduce a bill under a certain number, and they'll say it's for this. And then for whatever reason, that bill and that number doesn't get an author, it doesn't make it through the legislative floor, and someone takes it as the number and just slashes it, and it becomes something else, where before it goes into a vote later on in the legislative session. So you really do have to stay on top of this. There are ways that you can search for that. It is called the National Conference of State Legislators, and they host a searchable database, and you can put pings for anything with keywords. So keywords I suggest are compost, waste, garbage, landfills, diversion mandates, any keyword that you feel would be applicable to this, and get it sent to your inbox. There are so many things that I see come through, not just in the state of California, but also do national policy of watching it. If it's really good, it's a really good thing to copy, let us know about it. If it's like, hey, this actually might be kind of problematic, let us know about it. Let your team know about it. Let California know about it. So this is just a really good way to stay on top of the curve, because nothing hurts more than learning about a piece of legislation that might actually be catastrophic to your organization before you even get a chance to know that it was even being written. So this is a good way to stay ahead of the curve. Secret agencies. So you're going along, and then someone gives you a phone call, and you're like, who are you? From what agency? From you spoke with, and how are you related to? And it is a really complicated system and level of who manages what. So I can just very briefly explain that there are a few agencies which you must absolutely engage with. At over 100 cubic yards, you are going to have to more than notify any one of these and go through full permit processes. So do know that's a whole section, but most of us are under 100 cubic yards. So basically you need to notify your local enforcement agency. Sometimes they do charge a fee to come out and just inspect the site and make sure that you're doing what you say you were going to do. And that's about it, and that's about the end of it. But because the local enforcement agencies and CalRecycle do work very closely together, and because they do want to be aware of these programs, and because they're genuinely proud of you guys, I do want to paint this as a positive light to see and to bear witness to what we are doing at this scale. It is, don't be afraid. Please do engage your local enforcement agencies. The next people that might be interested are like the Water Resources Board, just to make sure that your water discharge isn't going into drinking or surface water or things that actually do pose health and safety issues. So there are a lot of laws and agencies that do make sense because we are managing a volatile material. Now we're very well aware we can do it well and not pose those hazards, but there are just people that need to check on it. So feel free to let them in, feel confident, and we'll be behind you also if there are nuisances or orders that happen at your site. That's exactly some of the technical support is that we will provide in working with those local agencies if for whatever reason it is becoming problematic for you. So bring them in, let them know about it, engage them in what you're doing, because we are working so hard on the other end to legitimize what we are doing at this scale that we don't want you to feel that you're working in a gray area or that you've got loopholes or you have to do framing in some certain way just to make it kind of work. No, we want this to be a legitimate way to compost, and we want the rest of the country to copy us. And they can't copy us if we're not doing the groundwork to do exactly that, is legitimize it. So find out every secret agency that might possibly come and knock on your door at the local level, but at the state level, those are the two biggest ones. So as long as you've got them, you won't have any problems. Methane, it's a gas. So find out what laws there are about reducing methane. And we know that's SB 1383. We've covered it to death, so I'm just going to say, next slide. Dumpster dive. Did you know there's actually a whole section of the law in your municipality? It's under municipal codes, not under zoning codes, that actually say where you can put that bucket that resident is going to place on their doorstep for you to come around and pick it up. There are laws that say what it can look like, when it can be placed out there, how long it can be placed out there, what type of truck can come and pick it up. And if you're switching them out for clean buckets or whatever it is. And some, they even have to be locked receptacles if they're actually bigger dumpsters so that someone can't come along and throw some other hazardous material in there that might pose that threat to public health and safety. So make sure you're also looking at dumpster law. Everyone really kind of forgets about that, but that's a really good one. And soil makers wanted, apply within. This is after you create your compost, how are you going to distribute it? If you make it and you use it on site, that is totally fine. You don't have to look any further. But we are definitely trying to generate revenue from what we're doing. And what's the best way to do that is through donation or outright selling our compost. So basically, if you're distributing in bulk, which is 110 pounds or more, in a bag that doesn't say, this is the best compost in the world, or make any sort of claim about what your product is, it saves the earth. It makes plants healthy. It's the most nutritious thing that you have ever seen. You just can't make any claims. You can distribute it in bulk and you can do that for sale. If you are producing over 1 ton of material per year, you will have to go through the Fertilizer Inspection Material Program through the California Department of Food and Agriculture. It is expensive, it's not impossible. I would be more than happy to walk you through that and start to, again, legitimize the compost that community makers are making so that we can actually sell this stuff, right? But that is a section of the law that if you get a team together, you're gonna have to start looking into. So best in show. We and Lynn are putting together a best management practices for community composting. This is something that we did in the city of Oakland for the Oakland City Council, just so that they had a lot more confidence in the work that we were doing, and saying that they felt like they were co-creating and they were co-collaborating the space of what is effective way to do composting. So although there were some times where I was like, that's unnecessary to lock the worm bins, we won't need that, but that was a need for the city. So this is an opportunity to co-create and take the best management practices guide we're creating through this program, take that to your city council and ask, is this sufficient for you to have confidence in exactly what it is that we're doing? And vision board. As you can see, I really love activities like that, which is think about the future, set goals, intentionality with those goals. So vision board with your team together is usually a really good way to end those soil policy party groups. So if you run them, these are 12 ideas. You can run a soil policy group, which is 12 meetings for 12 months, but finish always with vision boarding, which is where are we going to go together and how far are we in that process and what is left to be done. And so as far as the California Alliance for Community Composting is concerned, is we feel legitimized at the scale, the small scale activities for having a facility in the state of California. We feel that the state supports us. We do know that there are some local municipalities that don't quite know where to zone it or where to figure it out yet, and that's the place that we all need to work together right now, and where you might find individually you are going to experience some problems. So that, I'm saying and stating, is our need, and I welcome you into this process, and maybe we as a collective can start our own soil policy team, and then you can provide some of the answers from the homework of what maybe your local groups are doing to be part of this bigger picture where we kind of set these standards. And a whole bunch of other potential activities that we just need more funding to go through. But I think it would be really fun one day if push really does get to shove in any one of these policy. I would love to dress up in banana suits and have a protest down the street about whatever it is the issue. I think, or just straight up fruit of the loom, like we could be all the fruits. So if you're with me, the time to engage in policy is now. It is happening now in California. It's also happening all over the United States of America. And so our timing is behind us. And so there are a few things that make a policy advocacy effective, and that is that there is a window for it, there is a need for it, and it's the right time. So right now is the right time, and I welcome you into running the same soil curriculum. This is available on a website that I built. It's called compostlaw.org. It's to help make compost policy make sense for everyday people. So you can go down there, and all these slides, which have tons of words and you can't see, you can actually download them and read them right there. There's also a policy guide for how policy making happens, which I invite you to read as well. It's a little dense, 125 pages, but if you're like, how do I do contracts and biddings? How do I write a piece of legislation? How do I write a policy advocacy letter? This is the guide that actually walks you steps for that as well. So, and then I do want to put out that I would love to be a resource to all of you as you need me. And so the technical support that comes in policy for this program will largely be led by my efforts and my caring in this area for what we are able to accomplish together. So don't be shy, reach out, especially if someone is telling you no. I would love to turn that into a yes, it is possible, we've been successful, and I don't want you to get discouraged with anything that might feel like, they'll shut us down, because we have been able to change the thinking, and look where we are now. We can get there together, and so please use me as a resource. Thank you.